Good afternoon or good evening. I'm Mark McCarley. I'm the chair, at least through the balance of this evening, of the Glendale Civil Service Commission. And we have a interestingly robust agenda for this evening. And we will begin with roll call.
Commissioner Manukian?
Yes.
Commissioner Apkarian?
Yes.
Commissioner Kazarian?
Yes.
Commissioner Hartunian?
Yes.
Chair McCarley?
Here. Minutes, please.
Minutes for the meeting of December 11, 2019.
Move to approve, dispense from reading.
Second.
Commissioner Manukian?
Yes.
Commissioner Apkarian?
Yes.
Commissioner Kazarian?
Yes.
Commissioner Hartunian?
Yes.
Chair McCarley?
Here. Yes. This is the time for oral communications.
Just a quick note. Commissioner Ortunian was not here in the last meeting, so maybe you can abstain.
Well,
Or was he?
Commissioner Apkarian, he was not here, but we spoke with him about it.
He's read.
He reviewed the VDA chip.
It's my apologies. I apologize.
Okay.
And I think that since that is a pivotal activity tonight, whether it's appropriate to make an introduction as we have proceeded through roll call. And I'd like to introduce our newest commission member. And Corinne, if you could introduce yourself to those here present and those on GTV 6.
Yes, sure. Thank you, Chair McCarley. My name is Karan Hartunian. I am very happy and proud to be sitting at this dais among the accomplished commissioners, some of whom I've known for quite a few years now. I've been a resident of Glendale since 1997 when my family moved here from Armenia. I've gone through Glendale High School, Glendale College, and I've lived here. Now I'm raising my family here. Love the city, and it's a great opportunity and honor to now be a part of this commission and hopefully have a positive impact for our city.
I can speak for myself, and I hope for the commission. We look forward to your participation and are very grateful that you've stood up and accepted the challenge of serving as a commissioner in this dynamic committee.
Absolutely.
For the people of the city of Glendale. And with that, the oral communications, but seeing no cards, I think we'll pass.
Recruitment and examination report.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, the recruitment examination status report is provided for the current month. This is a listing that we provide every meeting of our active recruitments by staff member, as well as the titles of the job, whether it's an open or a promotional type of exam, obviously the department for which they reside, dates and scheduling of all the various examination processes. As you can see, we have about 52 currently, and that has remained steady for the last few months. We create lists, as you'll see from the next item, but new openings, new opportunities, new vacancies come in, so it's sort of an ongoing process. This item is a note and file, so unless you have any questions, it's note and file, and questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them for you.
Members of the commission?
I think Ando Vartanian doesn't have too much to do. I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
But we have to add a wee bit of humor in this, otherwise very serious meetings. And we'll move on then.
Eligible list established.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is our eligible list that have been established since our last meeting. It is a rather long list. However, we did not have a meeting in January, so it does comprise the lists have been established in the months of December, January, and part of February. We have in this report 19 lists that have been established, which is again quite an active recruitment load. 7 of those lists are open processes, 10 promotional, and then 2 that are promotional and open at the same time. Again, a lot of activity amongst the staff, and if you have questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them for you. Otherwise, this is a note and file.
Commissioners? Seeing none, we'll move on to reorganization of the commission. And I believe at this point, Mr. Doyle, whether you would move forward, and we are at that juncture when a new chair and a new vice chair are selected from amongst us to serve this coming year.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to nominate Garo Gazarian for the chair.
Second.
And may I ask, Mr. Manukian?
Yes.
Are you going to continue to serve?
I will,
Serve through
until the elections.
till the okay.
Till after the elections when somebody.
With that,
Mr. Chair, the commissioners would serve until they are replaced by an appointment, so it could be after the election or beyond. But
I wish it was sooner.
all right, well, that's an expression which it saddens me that I hear that Mr. Manukian will not stand tall and serve if I
After
were to
12
nominate
years.
him as vice chairman, but
No, you don't do that.
then
After
with that-
12 years, it's time for me to.
and this is in no way to introduce whom I would believe is an extraordinary vice chairman who served repeatedly as vice chairman or chair, and I would nominate Albert Abkarian as vice chair.
Second.
We could take those items as one and move forward with voting on both, or
consensus.
we can separate them and vote on the chair first and the vice chair second.
Well, to memorialize it, because there's great honor attendant to serving as vice chair and chair, let's do them separately.
Okay, so first we'll take the vote for chair.
Commissioner Manukian?
Yes.
Commissioner Karian?
Yes.
Commissioner Hartunian?
Yes.
Chair McCarley?
Yes.
Commissioner Gazarian?
Am I supposed to vote for myself?
Yes. You're entitled.
I am?
You don't have
Okay.
to.
All right.
Make
Yes.
it unanimous.
Okay.
I believe,
Can I appeal?
I do believe we have an electable and elected chair of the Civil Service Commission
Thank
for
you.
fiscal year 2021.
And the second item?
Vice chair,
Fiscal year 2020,
2021.
2021.
You can continue to serve long past even your own personal retirement age if you desire. All right.
Commissioner Manukian?
Yes.
Commissioner Hartunian?
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley?
Yes.
Chair Gazarian?
Yes.
Commissioner Karian?
Yes.
And
Congratulations.
I think that's consensus as well, yes.
Thank you.
And I do believe I'm just bemoaning the fact that I only have maybe a few more minutes to serve in this capacity. Am I removed at this point? Oh, my gosh. Well, with that,
Well, make a statement before you leave, though.
yes.
You just stay there, please.
I must defer to our new chair, and I look forward to serving with him. This has been an eventful year for several reasons. This commission has been very involved in both the selection, determination of eligibility, and every once in a while in disciplinary cases. I believe that amongst the five of us, we have made a positive contribution to our city and the great workforce that serves the people of Glendale on a daily basis. So again, thank you for the opportunity to serve. And with that, I want your chair.
Okay. Thank you. And may I have a moment before we move on to the next item?
Sure.
May I make a comment? Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you, Chair McCarley, for serving with distinction this past year and bringing what I view very positive energy and input and feedback and perspective to a commission that I've been a part of for the last 8 years. Thank you for your service. I'm sure you will continue to provide all of the wisdom and the leadership because there's five of us here and each of us are equal to one another despite what title we may or may not have attached to our name. It is a bittersweet evening for me. It's sweet because I'm grateful to the City Council for reappointing me for what seems to be my third term as a member of the Civil Service Commission as of a couple of weeks ago. I'm grateful to Council Member Paula Devine for nominating me and the rest of the Council for voting to confirm the nomination. It is bitter because from day one when I served here, going back to 2000, I want to say 11 or so, I served alongside a long-term serving commissioner and at times chair of the commission, Arthur Devine, who is no longer with us on the commission, having served what amounts to 3 terms and I suppose being termed out. I want to thank publicly Commissioner Arthur Devine's service and support of the commission, of the civil servants of the city, and the entire community for 12 years. It takes dedication to do it, and he brings a unique perspective and a dedication unique only to him. I will miss him. I know that the rest of us who have worked with him will miss him as well. And with that, I think I'm ready to proceed with the next item on the agenda. Mr. Doyle?
Class specification for approval, Administrative Specialist, CDD Series.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. This is a class specification for approval, the Administrative Specialist Series within the Community Development Department. This entire series is a non-management one. It is represented by the Glendale City Employees Association, and the series provides varying levels of administrative support to the management within Community Development Department. The changes proposed on this specification series are quite minor, and really it primarily affects the senior position within the series, the senior administrative specialist, and the proposal is to add lead worker duties to this position. Lead worker is not a fully supervisory type of position, but it would be having that individual have the ability to lead and direct staff. We thought this would be good to add that to this series, and a good preparation for those who are in this classification, and also to enhance promotability and future opportunities for advancement beyond this series. This is an action item. If the Commission is supportive, we would need a motion and a vote. I will say we have representatives from the department here, both Phil Lanzafame, who is the director, Darlene Sanchez, who's the assistant director, as well as Mr. Chavez from my staff.
Before we move on to a vote, are there any questions? No?
Move to approve.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Mnuchin?
Yes.
Commissioner Karian?
Yes.
Commissioner Hartunian?
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley?
Yes.
Chair Gazarian?
Yes. Thank you. Next item, please.
Class specification for approval, Sustainability Officer.
Okay. Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is a new class specification, unlike the previous item, which was a revision of an existing one. This is for a new position that will probably be filling in the near future. Sustainability is kind of a new concept we're beginning to see in many organizations, where you would place responsibility for a variety of citywide strategies and efforts surrounding environmental quality and sustainability all into one office. Some of the areas that are encompassed by this include sustainable energy policies, conservation efforts, recycling programs, clean burning vehicles and fleet, greenhouse gas reduction, sustainable building design. As you can see, it's quite broad. This concept was discussed in our 2019-2020 budget process, and the decision was made to at least create the title as we were going through the budget last year. We don't have an actual position budgeted quite yet, but in fact, we were not, at that time, we weren't even certain what department to put this in. It might be city manager's office, it could be water and power, it could be public works, or even community development. So at this point, I think we're ready to begin proceeding with that, and I think we're going to settle on having it in the city manager's office for now. Again, this is a brand new concept, a new title, and we have the specification here for your consideration. And we have Mr. Galanian from our assistant city manager here if you have any specific questions.
Questions?
Move to approve?
Hold on. You have a question?
It might be advantageous if the deputy city manager were to come forward and give us a broad view of the values that are or should be the consequence of the establishment of this new position. And I understand from the terminology in my reading that this relates to progress in fields that are of critical importance to the city of Glendale, green environment and that sort of thing.
Yes, yes.
And I think this is advantageous to those who are watching, not only participating here, but watching on TV, GT6.
Gladly. Good evening, Chair Gazarian, members of the commission. Congratulations, and thank you for your service, Mr. McCarley. So the city of Glendale has a long history, extensive history of sustainability initiatives. Anything from curbside recycling to composting to energy efficient facilities, green building codes, recently renewable energy, reclaimed water, recycled water, electric vehicle charging stations, etc. As it was mentioned, in today's organizations, this is a critically important position to manage and track all of these initiatives. One of the primary goals of the person in this position would be to consolidate all the various effort by multiple departments in the city under one umbrella. Another initiative and goal of this position is to create the city's first sustainability plan and to provide updates to city council, to the city manager, to various commissions, for example, water and power, transportation and parking, perhaps planning, as well as an extensive community outreach. The goal is to encourage greater participation in sustainability practices and also tracking of those efforts against specific targets, some of which are regulatory requirements. An example that comes to mind is SB 32, that legislation has put in place as law and requires reduction of greenhouse gas emissions from the year 1990 level by 40% by the year 2030, and then by 80% up until the year 2050. So these are some hefty requirements that we need to engage in, and this person will be responsible, again, to coordinate with various departments in the city to make sure that we meet these regulatory requirements.
If I could continue, Mr. Chair, just with a
Sure.
few more questions, comment, I applaud the initiative from a technical standpoint, since I am talking to one of our senior leaders of Glendale. It appears to me that this is a staff position without organizational authority. Would that sort of be true? The question leads to whether a suggestion, because sustainability across the variety of areas that you've described, resident in every single division and department of this city, and you've identified at least 10, right, whether in Parks and Rec, whether in our law enforcement and protective service in the fire department, whether it's in community development, each one of which has a part, the big picture of maintaining Glendale as a responsible corporate citizen within this state and nation. The only challenge is when you have an expert resident within one department, and you put it in community development, you could have as easily as you suggested put it in city management, is whether that individual does more than write reports. And having worked in big organizations, the challenge you often have is you have some person extraordinarily competent, eager, mission-oriented, wants to get the job done, and yet has no direct authority over those who can actually implement the sustainability policies. And the only other comment, and then I should really defer to you as the leader, is that I'm not sure as we progress through managerial type of discussions, whether the city, you, the city manager, have considered what we've often called other task forces. There are other terms for that are less, for me, militaristic, but task force, in which this sustainability officer would in fact engage with the department heads or designee of a department, and indeed have the authority that comes from the city manager, comes from you, to say to Parks and Rec, this is what we must do. I defer to you, sir.
Okay. Chair Gazarian, Commissioner McCarley. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the promotion. I am the assistant city manager.
Yeah, assistant. I'll promote you any day.
Thank you. Appreciate that. To answer your first question,
Call Jasmine. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
this position will be reporting to the city manager and will be housed in this management services department. That will provide the authority, the management authority that you described. We also have formed an internal sustainability committee comprised of members of Public Works Department, Community Service and Parks, Water and Power, as well as our Community Development, primarily Building and Safety Division. So there is an existing working commission that this person, our sustainability officer, will work directly with and will have the authority to direct that committee in various efforts and initiatives, especially when it comes to regulatory compliance. We thought actually about an outside advisory committee. Our experience with other agencies, based on our conversations with them, have been that those advisory committees have not been as effective as they would have liked to. Essentially, it invites millions of ideas. It creates a venue for complaints that may not lead to the primary goals of this position. However, one of the other responsibilities of this person would be to attend, like I mentioned, Water and Power Commission, to provide, not only provide updates, but also to provide a venue for the community or residents or even business owners to go to these commissions with this person in presence amongst the commissioners, to be able to provide guidance, to take in information and input and advice and suggestions from the commissioners, from the community at these commission meetings, and take it back to the working internal sustainability committee and ultimately get approved by the city manager's office for implementation.
And final question, and again, I'm delighted with the movement ahead for a challenge that all municipalities, governments face right now. Can we expect a strategic plan authored or at least overseen by our new sustainability officer, presented to the council, and become, upon council review, become the strategy for making Glendale green?
Chair Gazarian, Commissioner McCarley, absolutely. And I refer to it as the sustainability plan. It's the same thing. It's the strategic roadmap on where we need to go moving forward. And as I mentioned, we have a long history. We just haven't been able to centralize all those efforts. We even have a greener Glendale plan in place that needs updating. So that will be a part of the strategic plan or the sustainability plan that will provide a roadmap to the future as far as resiliency and recycling and sustainability and environmentally friendly initiatives are concerned.
Thank you.
You know, all I hear is additional development requirements. Cost of development just went up. I'm just kidding. You know where I'm going with this.
Ms. Gazarian, I have one question, not from you, but from the city attorney, with all due respect. Because we are not sure if this is going to stay here, or it could be moved to a different department at some point, could we vote on this tonight and also vote that if it needs to be moved to a different department, that they don't need to come back to the Civil Service Commission?
Actually, Commissioner Upkarian, the decision has been made at management level for it to be in the management services department.
Okay, all right. Then I have nothing more except to
Move to approve.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Manukian?
Yes.
Commissioner Abkarian?
Yes.
Commissioner Hartunian?
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley?
Yes.
Dr. Kazari?
Yes, thank you. Next item, please.
Job bulletin for approval, police custody officer lateral.
Mr. Doyle?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this item is a job bulletin for approval. And for the sake of our newest commissioner, I'll explain not every job bulletin that the city posts comes before the commission. There are some exceptions, and this happens to be one of them. In this case, we are seeking to modify slightly the minimum qualifications for this position due to the fact that we're seeking lateral transfers from other agencies for this round of hiring as custody officers. Ordinarily, this job really has no minimum requirements. The individuals come in on an entry-level basis. All the training is provided, and the candidates or the new employees are taught really all the aspects of the job on sort of an on-the-job basis during a one-year probationary period. In this case, we do know that we have the ability to attract individuals from other custody facilities, other jails, from other agencies. It sounds kind of unusual, but we not only have a highly desirable jail to reside in, but people like to come and work in our jail too. It's a nice jail. It's new, and it's very, very well run. So in this case, we do anticipate being successful in finding lateral jailers from other agencies.
Horrible food, but good place.
And how would you know this? Oh.
Let me move on.
Next question.
So we are proposing, as I said, a minor modification or deviation from the approved class specification that would require prior experience working in a custody facility, as well as this appropriate certification as having served in an adult correction facility, which is what's being added to this bulletin. I will say again, these tend to be fairly hard jobs to fill and to retain people in. It is a tough environment, and not everyone's cut out to work in a custody facility. But we believe this effort, this bulletin, will be successful in attracting qualified and motivated laterals. So with that, this is here for your consideration. And Juan Lopez, who is our custody manager, is here from the police department, if you wish to hear from him or have any questions.
Mr. Chair,
Hi, Juan.
if we could ask him just
Yes.
a quick one.
Very well. Mr. Lopez, please approach. Good evening, sir.
Commissioners, Juan Lopez, Jail Administrator.
I understand there's some questions, so I'll begin.
Quite simply, I can see the benefits of this particular position. The entry-level position remains in place,
Yes,
and you're not closing the door for somebody from off the street who aspires to become a custody officer and will work through the apprenticeship or training, the probationary period for 1 year.
oh, no, absolutely not.
The intent is there a differential in compensation and benefits for those that you lateral, let's say from the California Corrections, CCC, or whatever it's called,
Yeah.
or the Sheriff's Department for that matter, for their jail custody officers?
Sure. To answer your question, Commissioner, it is a very competitive field. So Glendale tends to pay fairly well, aside from a lot of other cities and that kind of thing. So when they come on, generally we start them at, I believe it's 3% higher than where they're at, just to bring them on board.
The laterals.
Yes, laterals.
Mm-hmm. And now you just want to institutionalize that, so for people who come from, let's say, the Sheriff's Department, and they have the expectation of receiving additional compensation because they have the training and experience and will come on board, but for learning the specifics of our jail, are ready to go forward and serve the community.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may just clarify one thing.
Yes.
To answer the question, this is not going to be the permanent means of doing this. We're not modifying the class specification. This is just for this bulletin, and I think we believe there's a candidate pool that's ripe right now for laterals, and obviously, it's much easier to bring people on who know the job, have done it before, and are experienced. So for this bulletin, it would be restricted just laterals. In the future, when we recruit again, we might consider going back to the way of doing entry levels. But again, it would take, it takes much longer to train, and obviously the success rate of someone passing probation who's never done this before is going to be a lot lower than somebody who's been experienced in this field. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
I'm highly supportive of the position. I'm just a wee bit concerned, and that is, can we push forward a bulletin for a specification, class specification that doesn't exist? I guess that's why I made the assumption, the quantum leap, that we would now have, as we do on the police, the sworn police officer, we have entry level, and then we have laterals, which are distinct classifications. And look, this is not an opposition. You're going to get my vote. It's just a concern whether or not we're moving forward with a bulletin in which there's no support for it.
Yeah, if I can add to that, at the present time, we're carrying a lot of vacancies.
Yeah.
It's very important that we fill those vacancies, and this is the quickest way to do that.
Okay.
I move to approve.
Excuse me.
I apologize.
I'm sorry.
I apologize.
I have some inquiries, if you don't mind.
Sure, sure.
I was a bit confused, and either one of you gentlemen may enlighten me. When I read it, on page 23, the background refers to, second line, this bulletin is presented for commission approval because the police department would like to modify the minimum requirements of the position. So, Mr. Doyle, I took that to mean this is now the new standard. Whereas when my fellow Commissioner McCarley inquired about, are we keeping the entry level, I got the response that yes, we all got the response that we're keeping the entry level. So if we are keeping the entry level, but this is a lateral one-time bulletin or a bulletin that is specially designed because we have a lot of vacancies we need to fill, that's fine. On page 24, the City of Glendale invites applications for the position of police custody officer. If I read that, and I, at first glance, may think, you know what, I've always wanted to be a custody officer, maybe go apply. Perhaps it ought to, yes, of course, when someone continues to read, it then reveals itself that it requires a one-year experience elsewhere. Is there a practice whereby we would say this, lateral, and that would make perhaps clearer sense that this bulletin is only for lateral, hiring candidates?
Chair Gazarian, this bulletin, again, we're bringing the bulletin to you, not the specification. The specification
so that's
is
the
more
distinction.
permanent. There's more permanency there. We don't update those as frequently. And that being said, we're asking that in this case, with this bulletin, that we be permitted to deviate from that specification because we believe, again, the market will provide us with some good candidates. And when Mr. Lopez says they have vacancies, it's not like vacancies anywhere else in the city. They have lawful obligations to staff that facility with X number of people. So that's kind of where we're at. And we'd like permission, as part of this, to run this bulletin and also future bulletins if we see the need, a similar need. There's also the desire, and I assume at some point in the future we'd want to go back to the old-fashioned way of bringing in truly fresh blood, people off the street on an entry-level basis. So we're not proposing to permanently change this. So if that
Very well. So in looking at it, Mr. Doyle, when I see the supplemental questionnaire attached, particularly page 28, the first 4 questions, and I revert back to page 26 where it sets forth the experience, education, training, and then drops down and talks about a paragraph which says note, which I consider that to be a flexibility clause that says an equivalent combination of experience, education, and/or training may be a substitute for the listed requirements, the minimum requirements. Maybe I'm a stickler for wording. In the experience section, it says must. Must is mandatory to me versus may as in permissive. Must currently be employed as a custody officer and possess a minimum of 1 year of experience. I don't know what equivalent can substitute that if you pigeonhole yourself into that kind of a setting. So perhaps the language is sufficient. You would know this better than I.
Mr. Chair, the note that you refer to is boilerplate language on every bulletin, every specification. In this circumstance, we probably, because we're taking the effort to bring this before you with a special bulletin with these experience requirements, we would probably not consider.
I mean, if there's an equivalent, then fine, but I can't think of any.
When we're saying you must have worked in a
So you're saying you have to take the note out?
We can leave it there, but it is boilerplate, and I can say every time we consider that note, it generally comes to my attention, and the staff, whoever's running the recruitment, will come to me and say, does this make sense? But in this case, I would highly doubt that we would consider that unless the candidate has that prior experience and has that certification.
Or the candidate has 11 months and starts the process, and by the time he gets up to the background investigation, if he makes the final round, will you then consider that, okay, now he's got a year? So
that might be, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd just assume not.
Fair enough.
Remove
Just
that.
to conclude this conversation, and I recognize the position, the significant position you hold, but equally acknowledge that when I ask this question, you're going to have to defer to your superiors. But would you, institutionally, the department, entertain perhaps a motion on our part? I'm not going to make the motion tonight, that we do indeed establish two class specifications. One is entry level and the second is lateral, and then conjunctively bring the pay scales appropriate for the level experience.
I would support that.
Yeah, I don't believe that the department's going to have an exception to that.
Yeah.
Very well. Thank you so much, Mr. Lopez.
Are you just asking the? Are you asking?
Well, I'm just putting
Chief
a thought
Examiner.
in the
Chief
mind.
Examiner,
I
Mr.
refer to
Doyle.
him as Chief
I
Examiner.
call him Mr. Doyle. I asked Mr. Doyle to bring back a report which will include that.
If I get a
sometime in the
second
future.
on that.
You did. You got a second
I
from the
did
chair?
from the
I'll give you-
chair.
I'll give you a
Then
second.
I'll consider mine a motion, and I've received a second for Mr. Doyle to come back and outline for us a modification that would incorporate specification for entry level and lateral. Then it's real clear, it resolves the chair's questions, and you have an opportunity to go out and see and bring in some really fine dynamic candidates to serve a very important function.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chair, I want to clarify that motion because I'm assuming it's a report that you will bring out. We don't really need a motion. Right?
Yeah, a report within
So it's a
90
report.
days or
I just want to
something.
make sure it's a report that discusses if there is a necessity for us to have a separate lateral, and if it does, then we can actually.
Yeah.
So I want it to be broad enough we don't have to do it if there's no need for it, but if you believe that it is necessary, then we can discuss it.
We'll discuss that with police. Also, I want to be clear, the establishment of the titles and the setting of salaries falls under the purview of the city council. not the
Understand.
commission.
I'm just
So
suggesting that.
there's part of this
Yeah.
that would involve us having, to go there as well.
True.
So,
No, I think a report is more than sufficient for our purposes.
And I would accept whatever modification that amounts to my motion.
Okay.
And I see a smile on your face, so you're not opposed from your
Can we
perspective.
get back to the
You might
item?
be
I just want to
crying.
make sure, it's not a motion, it's a request for a report.
Just a request for a
Correct.
report.
Correct, but we
Okay.
do have a motion and a
Yes.
second to get this item approved.
Yes, so back to the item and the motion in a second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Minuchin,
Yes.
Commissioner Karian,
Yes.
Commissioner Hartunian,
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley.
Yes.
Chair Guzarian.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Next item, please.
Draw bulletin for approval, budget analyst.
Mr. Doyle?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this is another job bulletin for consideration. I had already said that not every bulletin does have to come before the commission for approval. In the previous agenda item, we had a situation where the minimum requirements deviated from the approved class specification. In this case, we are seeking to have this bulletin approved because this position in its previous posting was done on a promotional basis. And at this point, we're now seeking to recruit for it on an open basis. And when that occurs, we bring it before the commission. We inform the employees within the department, and we inform the employee association impacted by this if they have any objection, or if they have employees that might object to that. And if they do, they can come before you and express that. In this case, we believe we've tapped that internal candidate pool as far as people with these specific skill sets and experience sets. So at this point, we're seeking to broaden that pool and do an open recruitment to advertise and see what we get in the open market. So with that, we have Ms. Navarro from my staff worked on this, and we have several individuals from our finance department, Audrey Sayan, who's our deputy director over this area. So,
Thank you. Seems to be straightforward. Any questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Manukian?
Yes.
Commissioner Karian?
Yes.
Commissioner Hartunian?
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley?
Yes.
Chair Gazarian?
Yes, thank you. Next item, please.
Reports.
Sorry?
Reports.
Thank you. Mr. Doyle?
Mr. Chair, we do have the one report, which is our standard report after every meeting, and this is the departments with past due performance evaluations. Again, for the sake of our newest commissioner, the commission has a longstanding concern over not only the assurance that the evaluations are served on an annual basis to all employees within the organization, more importantly, that they're served in a timely fashion. And this commission has been very vigilant about that. And that's essentially what this report contains. It has the listing of those departments that do have any evaluations that are past due. There are 4 of them that have past due evaluations between 30 and 60 days. And then the good news is that you have the majority of the departments listed here that have no past due evaluations at all. And you also see the size of those various departments, and quite amazing that some of our largest departments, including police and water and power, are the ones that have no late evaluations. So this is a note and file report, but again, it's here for your consideration, and if you have questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them for you.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Next item, please.
Civil Service Commission staff comments.
Thank you. Any comments?
Me too, Carl.
Yes.
Albert,
Go ahead. You go first.
No, go ahead.
I just have a few comments. I hope you bear with me for a second. Waited until the Civil Service Commission comments before I make these comments. First, I personally served with Mr. Devine many years ago when I was in the Civil Service Commission. Then I took some time and I came back again and I served with him again a second time. And just incredible commissioner, a commissioner that really cares about just transparency, cares about only what's right. We always said, and he always did the right thing. I hate to lose someone as intelligent, as smart, as qualified as Mr. Devine. But I understand that the City Council has put a limit on this commission, and that other people have to serve accordingly. I want to thank him. I want to say that he's done an incredible job, and that I personally, as a commissioner, and I know everyone else has said, that we appreciate everything that he's done for this commission and for this city. My second note was welcoming Mr. Artunian to the commission. We don't talk about his qualifications, because if we say something wrong, he was a ranked WBO boxer and he was a nationally recognized boxer. So I don't want to say too much, then I'm sitting right next to him, I'm too close to him to say anything bad, but he's a welcome and looking forward to your service. And last but not least, thank you, Mr. McCarley, for a year of a great work as a chair, and you gave us a whole lot of new titles we have to remember now. But besides that, I think you've done a great job, and we want to thank you for everything you've done in this commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abkarian. Go ahead, sir.
I also want to thank Art Devine. I had the pleasure of working with him for 8 years in the Planning Commission, and we both came onto this commission at the same time. Officially and unofficially, this will be my last meeting. And unless you guys need me back, hopefully you won't. So
I think you might have to come back one more until somebody appoints someone. So
if it's needed. Assume that I won't be here. That's what, I mean, if it's needed, I will come. But I just wanted to take this opportunity, to thank the City Council for giving me this opportunity. I also wanted to thank the city staff, HR, Matt Doyle. This past 12 years has been a very interesting ride. It was a wonderful journey, and along the way I met so many great people, learned many things. I especially got to see what a fantastic group of civil servants we have in this community. And I want to thank my fellow commissioners. As a number of you know, I've been waiting to resign because I think 12 years is enough time. This seat doesn't belong to me. I occupied it, and I'm very grateful during this time. But it's time for new people to come, new ideas. When I started this, I got into the habit of making a log of all the hours that I put in. And after 610 hours, I stopped keeping count. It's a lot of hours. I don't think anybody realizes, especially when you have a lot of different hearings. There was a couple of years that we had a lot of hearings. I mean, a lot of hearings. Some of you were there. But I think it's time for a change. It's time for somebody to come in here and with some new ideas. Thank you for the time. Thank you for everything that I've learned. And I'm very comfortable that it's in good hands. And I'm sure I'll see you guys around. Hopefully not, but I'm just kidding. No, but thank you very much for everything.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
How do you follow that? I don't know if this is your last commission meeting or not, so I'm going to make some comments, assuming that it is. It might be. And if you come back, I'll make one more. I'll make more comments next meeting. I've known Mr. Manoukian going into when we were kids in Scouts and many years ago. I've known him for over 30 years now. I have to tell you that when he came into Civil Service Commission, we weren't really sure how he was going to be. And he's done just an incredible job as a commissioner, just a great individual. Again, the same as Mr. Devine, cares about what's the right thing to do. He's done it. He's looked everyone in the eye, and he's done the right thing every single time. Accordingly, I want to congratulate you for what you've done. Thank you for what you've done for the city, and thank you for what you will continue to do and for the community as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. I want to welcome you, Mr. Haroutunian. You will enjoy this experience, I'm certain of it, and we will enjoy your input. I look forward to working with you over the course of our tenure here. I will not say anything about you, Commissioner Manoukian, because you will be back, and if you're not back, then just think of this. what will I be saying in your absence? So maybe you should be back.
You won't have anybody harassing
until you
you.
are replaced. Yeah. Who's going to harass me now, right? Anyway, in any
Guy who
event.
knows how to punch.
Yeah, he won't punch me. I've known him. He's a nice guy.
Just kidding.
Very well. Thank you. Is there any other items? I think we need the motion to adjourn if there
Move
are
to
no other
adjourn.
comments. We are adjourned. Thank you.